On Saturday morning, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented the annual Union Budget for the year 2020-21. Sitharaman had on Friday tabled the economic survey which projected the state of economy as well as outlined its challenges.
The Prime Minister has highlighted that 100 lakh crores would be invested on infrastructure for the next 5 years. As a follow-up measure, I have launched the National Infrastructure Pipeline on 31st December 2019 of 100 electronic equipment and semiconductor packaging.
So how does the budget fare on key parameters, and will it help boost the economy? Mirror Online spoke to experts to help deconstruct the budget this year. Here are the key takeaways from it.
Frankly speaking, there is nothing much which I can say that is remarkably done in this budget. Basically, this budget is having a lot of announcement with lack of clarity. So I cannot say there is anything very specific which makes the budget more useful or budget wonderful kind of thing.
Don't expect anything.
Okay,
Is that a takeaway? And I was not expecting also, frankly.
I think the one key takeaway from the budget was that the government is very focused on rural development now, and that water conservation and renewable energy, specifically with everything that was promised with solar, are going to be kind of the building blocks of that farming revolution.
If I have to give a, the most important takeaway is this is a directional budget towards simplifying the tax regime, making it a less adversarial for the taxpayers as we move along. And another thing is a landmark thing, in terms of bringing a scheme to resolve the past disputes which have been pending with the various courts for years and years, which is neither beneficial to the taxpayer nor beneficial to the government.
The one key takeaway is it's a normal budget, and there was an expectation of a big bang reform. But that's not something. But then there are some smaller takeaways that the budget gives in terms of relaxation of personal income tax, dividend distribution tax being taken away, and announcement of disinvestment of LIC. So there are some announcements which are done to boost the income on the government side, and some freebies given to the retail people.
With respect to the budget, government has put a thrust on the infrastructure. They have increased the allocation to the road sector per se, but the increase in allocation is hardly a percentage as compared to the last year. The government has also talked about 100 trillion to be awarded in next 5 years, and which will be basically in terms of the funding. They have talked about NHI monetization of the assets, which will be around 12 bundle of the asset which will get monetized over the period of 2 to 3 years. And they have also talked about the funding to the IFCL, so that that can get internally funded for the infrastructure players. So by that count, there will be almost 1 trillion of fund will be available from the financial institution to infrastructure company for the PPP projects. And government has put a more thrust on the PPP project also going forward to be awarded. And in terms of the award clarity, though they have talked about 5 years plan, but in year wise there was no clear cut allocation till in couple of years how much will be awarded by this March and how much will be completed. I think that will be decided by the road ministry. And in terms of the taxation, basically there is no benefit as such for the infrastructure, because the government has already reduced the tax rate for the all companies. And in terms of the DDT, they have removed the DDT from the companies. That is very welcome move, and now it will be taxable in the hands of the recipient. Earlier there used to be issue of disallowances because of the section 14A, which will avoid litigation dispute at the company's level when they used to receive the dividend distribution tax.
I think the key takeaway is 100 airports by 2025. I'm looking forward for that.
We shouldn't expect the budget to be the mother of all cures. if people do their jobs, it's an incremental, everyday sort of job being done at the Ministry of Finance. And I think we have this expectation of, one size fits all and one day, whatever, 3 years long, curing all evils and ills. It's actually a process that, it's a day-to-day process. People have jobs that they spend their time on. So I think that key takeaway is to manage our expectations with the reality.
So let me tell you about, with regards to health, not quite happy with the budget overall. So they've allocated about 69,000 crores for the healthcare sector, which is very low. It's almost 1.3%. We would have expected at least 2.5%. So in developed countries, it's about 10%. In countries like America, it's about 18%. So we're not even close to it. So private sector is about 2.5% in India. So we would expect at least about 1.5 lakh crore to be allocated this time. So unfortunately, it's not happened. So not very happy with the primary budget, at least for healthcare. So education has been given 1 lakh crore. Transport has been given 1 lakh crore. So water has been given almost 3 lakh crores. So healthcare should have been a little better.
There are some plus points and there are some minus points. The strong plus point is introduction of new education policy. As a teacher, we all are waiting for this new economic policy to be launched and to be implemented as soon as possible. However, this is a long-term policy, but I didn't see any quick relief to education sector, as as per the points mentioned by Honorable Finance Minister in her speech.
So I guess the way I look at this budget is that within the kind of fiscal constraints that the country was in, they have tried to kind of work at specific aspects of it. Some key areas that needed to be looked into have been given some amount of priority. I would surely call out agri-logistics as a key area that the budget was talking about the cold supply chain build out, about the air and railway kind of coming into play for a farmer. I think that was a very, very key essential area that needed to be looked into. So I'm glad that there was some mention to that, some reference to that. I think some of the other sectors like education also got a good mention. Seems like the education policy is like headed in the right direction for the country. I also think that some of the financial sector reforms probably were in the right direction. DDT, at least from a corporate perspective, is a benefit. For an individual, it's still getting taxed in his hand, so that still remains a challenge. So there were some amount of positives, but obviously the government is also running with certain amount of constraints, just given that the fact that the fiscal was in the position that it is, and they could not really go out and be completely open about giving out benefits or making all sectors work from that perspective. So I think in that sense it was a measured budget from my perspective.
So was there something in the union budget that fell short of expectations? Here's what our experts had to say.
The one very big important factor that budget missed out was how do you create an environment where which will lead to easing of credit in the system, and also boosting the morale of for investors, especially the manufacturers, the business guys. So that is something that I feel that budget missed out on.
Yeah, I think the one major thing that the budget missed out on was short-term reforms. Because I think a lot of the things that were promised in the budget, although they were very good and very healthy measures, whether it's water conservation or whether it's a new education policy, I think those are going to be impactful in the 5 to 7 year horizon. But I think with the kind of suffering that the economy is in today, with the lowest growth rate in a really long time, I think some short-term measures would have been useful.
Missed out in terms of basically there was expectation in terms of the exemption of the capital gain from the equity side. I think they have missed out. They might cover, as they have covered the corporate taxation also, not in the last budget but in between the two budgets. They might, if think appropriate, they might cover that also.
I was expecting for last 3-4 years that considering the health issues, looking at a health sector, they will consider now this mental health issues. The 7.5% of the population which is suffering in India, which will be covered in these health issues. That was one. And second is more allocation to the education sector, wherein BRICS countries currently are having more than 10% and India is still less than 5%. And third, of course, is we just merely make announcements. So I was expecting that even last year budget, if that had continued and said this is the last year budget, from last page to now this is a new page and I'm not talking anything and let's do it.
I would say there's not much we have heard about NBFCs as to how they would be recapitalized and how we would kind of bring the missing liquidity, as they form a very important clog between the MSME sectors and the kind of a financing or informal financing, I would say. And the other one is the stress which real estate is going through. Barring the certain exemptions given to affordable housing sector, there's nothing much for the real estate sector, which is again reeling under a tremendous pressure because of the liquidity squeeze and some of the other steps taken earlier by the government.
Okay. The budget missed out on so many things, like economic reeling under Great Recession. There is a lot of unemployment. The industry, especially the MSME sector, is facing lot of problem by way of not getting the ITC credit to their account. They are losing their working capital. The industry is facing tough competition from imports, and it's not because of cheap imports, it's because of non-rationalization of import duties, where the duty on the finished product is lower and on the raw material it is more. So they are not competitive to import the raw material and make the product in our country. Rather, they prefer to import the finished product and sell it as trader. So that is not addressed at all. Simultaneously, nothing is done to boost the industrial production so that more employment is generated. That is lacking.
So F&B was ignored again in this budget, and I was looking out for some amendments in GST input tax credit for F&B.
So I think expectations was, people were expecting this to be, the solution to restarting consumption and really kicking demand up, which obviously hasn't been addressed in this budget. But I think they're serious about addressing this. So hopefully in the next few weeks and months they'll figure out ways of addressing how to kickstart and revive demand and consumption.
So they missed out on a couple of things. So as I said, the GDP, it's only 1% right now, 1.3%. First. Second, they should have come up with some mandate for insurance for people, self-employed professionals, for people working in company. They should have come up with some schemes for senior citizens to take affordable healthcare, which has not happened. She has spoken on TB harega, desh jeetega, but then so India has about 27% of the overall load, which is the highest in the world. So she has mentioned that there are going to be funds, but it's not mentioned how. Again, with regards to Ayushman Bharat, which is the world's largest healthcare scheme, only 6,000 crore has been allocated. I would probably prefer about 12,000 crore would have been allocated and the reimbursement rates would have been increased. So more hospitals would have participated in the scheme. Because of that, more people would have got access to this scheme, benefit of the scheme. Presently, only 20,000 hospitals are on the panel. If this fund would have increased, it would have encouraged more hospitals to come on the panel, which unfortunately has not happened this time.
If you give me liberty to to elaborate the points which was mentioned in today's budget, the first point was foreign direct investment in education system. Frankly speaking, foreign direct investment in education has been allowed right from 2005, and that is also through automatic route. So no government permission required. Automatic route as well as 100% FDI allowed. So the question is that FDI is allowed through automatic route 100%, what is the need to announce it again in 2020 budget? Point number one. Point number two is FDI in education, but which sector, which area? Research and development. If research and development, then certain issues like intellectual property rights or patent need to be taken care. So there is no discussion on these areas which need immediate attention.
So what it probably missed out on, which I was hopeful, was the fact that your current state of the economy, you're in a state of flux where your GDP is slowing down, your consumption matrices are just not kicking up, rural demand is completely off the charts. I don't think there is any step that's going to immediately change that. And to me, that was probably the one thing that was lacking. I didn't see any. For example, a rural demand could have been kicked up by giving some benefit under the Manrega scheme. You know, that has proved to be a very successful scheme for the government earlier as well. And if there was a booster there, that would have immediately put money in the hands of the consumer, the rural consumer, who would have then obviously improved his spending, which would have obviously had a benefit to the manufacturing sector and so on and so forth. The entire cycle could have been given some kind of a booster. And to me, that's probably the one thing that's lacking, because the current state of the economy is not great. We know that it's under with GDP is under a degrowth cycle. Consumption demand is also under a degrowth cycle. The services sector is doing reasonably well. Manufacturing sector is undergoing stress, again linked to the fact that there is limited consumption. So I think that aspect of it probably could have been focused upon in some form and shape to kind of give that immediate boost. So tomorrow morning, you are seeing some kind of a benefit coming through.
I can't say that what exactly budget has missed out on, but I was not so impressed because it's not going to give me benefit. My business is not going to get a benefit with this budget. So overall, I feel that, you know, it was okay for me. I know for the other prospects and for the other people and other business people might, you know, for them it is more, you know, benefit. But for my business, it's just average with the appliance things and other things which they have, you know, increased on taxes and all that. So on GST and all that. So with that, it's not going to, you know, help out in my business so much.
We also asked our experts to rate the union budget on a scale of 1 to 10.
I would rate this budget on a scale of 10 at 7.
I would like to rate this budget not more than 5 out of 10 at this stage.
I will rate 6 out of 10.
I think I'll rate it 3.
So I would give it 5 out of 10 as an overall budget.
I would like to give 6 out of 10.
As I was expecting, there's nothing is going to come, and finance minister, you know, met my demand, so it's 50%.
Well, based on the fact that I expected this also to have a bigger impact than it has, I'd say for my own expectation levels, maybe a 5. But I think it's more of a vision sort of document that shows us, you know, what the government's thinking of as a broad strokes. So as long as the implementation is good, then I'll rate it higher. But currently, I'll rate it a 5.
I would give 4 rating on a scale of 10 because I felt that budget could have been far more better in terms of providing the impetus which economy needed at this point in time, that how it is going to reach from 4.8 to 10%, which the finance minister said. But I think the concrete steps are missing there.
I would rate the budget as a 6 because I think that their heart is in the right place while they set the budget. I think there's a lot of good intentionality behind the budget, but I can't give it a higher rating because I'm really doubtful about the implementation of the budget. I think this government has had a history of making some big promises, and I'm really hoping that this time they will push forward on those and really give the rural economy and the entire economy the boost that it needs.
I'm giving it a 6 because, like I called out earlier, within the constraints that they had to be a little measured in terms of how they are approaching this particular budget. I would expect that going like they did last year, going through the year, they will bring out other policies, other aspects that potentially require immediate attention. And I guess this has become more like a fiscal, it's more like a policy statement budget, like that's what happened last year. So I guess it's a continuation of that. So in that sense, it's called out certain areas that they're going to focus on, which is pretty good.